Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions, now in its 26th season. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team. Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 24/7 with Fight on State. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ's Ryan Riskey. And each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntingdon. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Fullington Tours, offering round-trip transportation to and from Beaver Stadium from locations in State College and Altoona. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs, candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Harry's Construction, if you can dream it, we can create it. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
Penn State rebounds after losing to Michigan with a 27-6 win over Rutgers. The offense pounded the ball on the ground for more than 200 yards in their first game after firing offensive coordinator Mike Yurcich. We discuss his dismissal as well as dissecting the offense, plus we look at potential bowl game scenarios. Nittany Nation Overtime is next.
Hey, what I'm doing, hey, getting right to it. Yeah, the money is talking, I'm flowing, it's coming in just how I do it. Yeah, you know what it is. Hey, we doing it big. Look up, there is no limit, no, we cannot settle for this. Yeah, can't stop, nah, won't stop. Yeah, it's been on live. You don't believe it, just watch.
Welcome into Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Ryan Riskey, joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and former Nittany Lion Keith Goon Conlon, who's on the 1994 undefeated team. And guys, 27-6 win over Rutgers. Seemed like though there were some questions, especially revolving the offense. The defense, as usual, came to play.
Well, why don't we start with the big fella? I mean, you know, we finally got him down here this year.
I do have to send an apology. I mean, we were the last team to let Rutgers score a touchdown at Beaver Stadium in 1994, so I do want to throw that apology out there. But yeah, I'm always happy to be here, boys.
You took it out on them the next year.
Yes, we did, and the year after that, the year after that. So yeah, so miss you guys. I love doing the show down here.
Yeah, good to see you.
My first actually home game visit.
Wow.
I'm usually later at night for away games, but here I am.
Well,
for
thanks
you,
for being
Neil, for
well
you.
rested. Yeah, appreciate you. Is that the lingo now?
Yes.
You know, Penn State has not generally played well after a loss, a disappointing loss. That's been the pattern. I don't know that their defense came to play, and they, a lot of things happened during that game. You get the quarterback hurt. We'll see where that goes. But I thought just generally kind of a malaise for senior day. They got a win. They're 9-2. But I didn't think it was an overly impressive offensive performance again.
A familiar script against Rutgers, right, where Penn State doesn't play particularly well. Rutgers kind of grinds it out, keeps it a game until kind of some point in the second half. The thing that I liked is with the offensive coordinator change, it looked initially as if Penn State really didn't have any kind of game plan. You didn't know what they were doing. But when that game was on the line and your quarterback's out, they finally committed to something. They decided, you know what, let's run the ball, and they did run the ball, and they ran it well. Will that work against every single team? I don't know, but it almost looked like they used the same game plan that Michigan used against them, where it's like, you know what? There's no chance that Rutgers is going to score enough points to win this game. Run the ball and score a couple touchdowns. Let your defense do what it needs to do. And it worked. And I give Ty Howe and Jay Wansider a lot of credit. That couldn't have been an easy situation. And at some point, your quarterback's down, commit to the run. The offensive line played well. The running back showed a spark. Nick Singleton showed signs of life. Bo Prabula did a nice job. I just like that they committed to something.
Well, they did 17 times in a row in the second half. We'll see what happens is it this week. I mean, it's pretty obvious with James' body of work. He wants the quarterback to run the football occasionally.
No matter what.
No matter who you have either. You know, he wanted that with Hackenberg. I mean, you go all the way back, and their offense seems to function better when the quarterback can until he got hurt.
I mean, it was a matter of time before the new offensive coordinator, or former offensive lineman and running backs coach decide, hey, let's just keep running the ball. I mean, I thought they'd come out like that, but like Mark just said, they didn't know. It was sort of a hodgepodge thing out there. They didn't know. And when they got their feet underneath them a little bit, they took care of business as OCs.
You know, and I think kind of the one thing is you didn't know what they were going to look like offensively. Obviously, it was another kind of uneven performance from Drew. He was under 50% passing before he was injured, and it's 2 games in a row now they've been under 100 yards passing.
Well, yeah, and the wide receivers disappeared in this game. And that's where, you know, I don't know that I would have gone into that game thinking, hey, commit to the run, commit to the run. I would have thought maybe you use a short passing game. But you come out of that game, Keandre Lambert-Smith wasn't even targeted. And I know in the second half those stats get a little bit skewed, but the inability of things to click in that passing game just kind of maddening all season. And that's why I think ultimately when they decided to go to the run, it was a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, something was going on there, obviously, involving Mike Yurcich, Keandre. I mean, he was targeted a lot through the most of the season, and for him to be have a complete being blanked. But again, they weren't on the same page with Cephas. You know, I mean, and he's a guy that came out of that Maryland game playing well. I thought actually Amari Evans had a good game. He blocked well, too, in addition to coming up with a good catch. They hit Warren early. They hit Liam Clifford. They threw the ball over the middle with Drew while he was healthy, better than they have lately.
And I think kind of one thing, going back to Keandre, 1 catch for 6 yards over his past 2 games. Like, as Mark, you said, the wide receivers just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I don't think they go into that game thinking, hey, we're not going to throw to a certain play. I do like the fact that they did work different wide receivers in to the mix, even though it didn't really, pay dividends at the end. But, end of the day, you win a game by 3 touchdowns. Again, Neil said, kind of a malaise, senior day, the students aren't there. I think you take that win, as James Franklin says, you're not going to apologize for any win, but there's still so many things with that offense that you just look at it, and even with the coordinator change, where are they? Now, you only have 1 game left, and I don't think it's going to really matter in that game, but where's it going to be for the bowl game?
Right. I think, Mark, and you alluded to earlier in the show, they found their identity at the end. They ran the ball. And, Keith, I'd like to get your thoughts, how the offensive line played to allow them to run the ball so well.
Yeah, I mean, to add in what Neil and Mark have been saying about the tight end play, I mean, it doesn't seem like it was there all season with the tight end passing game. And I think that we have 2 great tight ends that we're finally starting to utilize a little bit, going down the middle of the field. But as a tight end, you're half offensive lineman, half wide receiver. So so we can actually run the ball with those tight ends in the game too. We go double tight out there. Offensive line wise, I expect it to be better this year, to be honest with you. I mean, with a lot of the progress they had made last year, that they really didn't take that next step up this year. Showed a little bit yesterday, but I mean, we're not giving Rutgers enough credit defensively. That's a really good defense out there, and I knew they were going to shut our wide receivers down. So it was up to the offensive line and our tight ends and our running backs to carry that load.
Obviously, a lot of mixed emotions from this offensive performance. Ran the ball well, struggled throwing the ball like they have throughout the entire season, and a big offensive coordinator change. We had to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to discuss Mike Yurcich's firing and the offensive coordinator change. Don't go anywhere. Nittany Nation Overtime will be back in just a few.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Reed and Selene Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. And by McAlear's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Ryan Risky, joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and Keith the Goon Conlon. And guys, obviously we record the show in the mornings, and last week some major breaking news happened afterwards with Mike Yurcich being fired. I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the offensive coordinator change.
Well, nice audible last week, by the way, Ryan. You were able to get Neil back in.
Thank you. And Neil, I appreciate you coming back.
Yeah, to address it. But hey, listen, I mean, for James Franklin to do that in the middle of the season, I think we had a suspicion after the Michigan game when he talked about the game plan not being kind of what they wanted it to be, that Mike Yurcich, and we actually talked about it on the show, it never made it to the air, was on a hot seat. But that if what James Franklin was saying is true, and I don't know that I have any reason to doubt him, but if they had a game plan and it wasn't being followed through on, that borders on insubordination. And I think that's why he made that change kind of when he did. And I don't know that I've ever seen that, at least with this program. Obviously back in a previous era, we never saw coaches fired, but for that to happen when it happened, wow.
Yeah, he really hung him out to dry after the Michigan game. He questioned him against Ohio State. He really went out of his way to praise him against Iowa. It's clear these guys really weren't on the same page. Now there's been reports that he told a recruit before the Michigan game that Yurcich wasn't going to be there. So there's a lot of questions. We haven't, to be fair, we haven't heard from Yurcich. We probably won't. Yeah. It's kind of how the way it works. But I think the whole thing has been a real cluster.
Mm-hmm. Well, the change up to the players is what it affects the most. But like I was talking on my radio show last week, like going into that practice, that had to add a little bit of spunk to the team because you're going to see what Sider and Ty are going to do because they're going to be a little different than Yurcich was. Not just calling plays, but just like how the practice is set up type of thing. So they got through it. There was a little learning curve there that went on in the first half, but I thought that they caught up to them. And as I said before, they finally just said, okay, let's just run. Let's just run the ball. And
they kind of settled down. Maybe there's some jitters beforehand, and I think that kind of as Mark, you said, when James alluded after his press conference against Michigan that game plans were not being called the way they thought they were, and you could tell like that it wasn't just a one-time thing, that had been going on more than they wanted to.
Yeah, but you know what? And maybe he did say they wanted to run the ball more against Ohio State, which they didn't, and that was a question. But I'm not buying all this stuff. I mean, it wasn't Yurcich's decision, to punt, and it wasn't Yurcich's decision to start going for 2 in the first half. So there's a lot of culpability to blame, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think that's what I'm talking about is when the decision was made. I mean, typically he's not been afraid to wait until the Monday after the season to make these decisions, to make it during the season.
Yeah.
And he also said that, if you read into it, that this was something that he talked to the rest of the staff about. I mean, so clearly something was not working quite right there. I will say this much, that with Ty Howell and Jaywan Sider, if you look at what both of these guys have been about, they're both glue guys. They're both people. Yurcich could be a little bit on the abrasive side, and I think the fact that he bumped these two guys up to co-offensive coordinator, it kind of tells you what he's looking for, guys who are just better communicators within the program. But I don't think anybody's blaming Yurcich for everything.
Right.
But the fact that they made the decision when they did, boy, that kind of speaks volumes.
Big disconnect between these two guys.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, there's usually the offense-defense disconnect. And as a former player, I have always thought that when it comes down to the offensive struggles is you have to worry about your defensive guys who've been, like they hung Penn State, they kept Penn State in many, many games this year, and to the point where you're going to have an insurrection coming from the other side of the locker room. And I've seen it happen before. We all know of multiple times it happened at Penn State. I think that James wanted to get that out of the way and say, hey, we're trying this. We're going to go a different way.
We know the way the defense carried that 94 team.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, but now this will be the 6th offensive coordinator, and you're on your 5th receivers coach. So there's a lot of things that are tied into some offensive dysfunction.
And I think another thing to factor, we also don't. James said he wants a head coach of the offense. He wants a head coach of the defense. He wants a head coach of the special teams. We don't know what James' involvement in the offense is, and that seems to be the one area or one side of the ball where there seems to always have been underlying issues. And 6 offensive coordinators as he's going to head into his 11th season. It's kind of concerning.
Well, we know he's been carrying that play card with him for his entire career. But listen, you go to practice, and you've been there, Ryan, and Goon back in the day. James Franklin spends most of his time with the offense. I mean, he's an offensive-oriented coach. So you can say that you want a head coach of the offense and of the defense and whatever, but clearly the defense was handled differently under Manny Diaz than the offense under Mike Yurcich because Franklin was just there more often. And, I wonder, as this thing opens up, when they go to look for a new offensive coordinator, which they're obviously already doing, who's going to be the kind of person who fits that role? And I think there are certain
Plus, you're sitting here with a drop-back quarterback right now, and who's injured, and what's going to happen? What do they want? What kind of offense do they want to run?
Right, and sometimes the personnel might determine that. And guys, a 10-win season really could be on the horizon to a New Year's Six Bowl. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to discuss potential bowl opportunities and possibilities. And Penn State looks like they're in that driving seat to get into another New Year's Six Bowl. Don't go anywhere. Nittany Nation Overtime. We'll return in just a few minutes.
The NitWits are being brought to you by Monarch Cleaners for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. And by Star Beverage. No matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Ryan Risky, joined by Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and Keith the Goon Conlin. And guys, obviously we just discussed Mike Yurcich's firing, and there's a lot of offseason needs. Obviously the first step of business is going to be finding that new offensive coordinator.
That's probably why they got the jump start on it. And hey, I don't like firing coaches certainly during the season, but that's the world we're in now with college football. Yurcich was being paid handsomely. He knew what he signed up for. So this isn't, turn back the clock era when, Joe pretty much, he hated it when people targeted his assistant coaches and criticized them even.
Yeah, very little turnover under the Joe Paterno. But it's been different. And the one thing we know about Franklin is that he doesn't do this sort of thing without a plan. And whether you love him, whether you're critical of him, he always has a list of potential candidates that he's thinking about. So it's going to be interesting to see how quickly they can do this. I think ideally you would love to get this done before the bowl. I don't think you would bring somebody in to be the coordinator for the bowl. We've seen in the past where they've been able to bring in, last year you get Manny Diaz on board and just get them in early enough. So to me, that's the key thing, is that ideally you want to get somebody in sooner rather than later.
He seems like a heck of a coach. Could he do both?
Diaz? Well,
no, but like people are saying,
at Miami it didn't work out that well.
James doesn't want somebody, a high-powered guy, a high-energy, high-name guy, because he doesn't want somebody looking over his shoulder. And I say that's completely false, because you hired Manny Diaz to run your defense. Yeah. He's not worried about that. And people have that assumption of James that he's not going to hire somebody who will he replace me. I don't think that's the issue. I think that James is going to go out there and find the right guy. I mean, Manny Diaz has been a great addition to Penn State, to the point where I'm like, I hope we don't lose him this year.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I think that's an obvious, worry is him going elsewhere.
Yeah, you hope you don't have two coordinator searches going on.
I mean, you're exactly right.
So, and I don't think it's a coincidence that, who is James Franklin's best coordinator? I mean, it was Joe Moorhead, a guy with head coaching experience, and a guy who, when you talk about somebody who was the coach of the offense, I mean, clearly Joe Moorhead was that guy, and it'd be interesting to see if he's in play.
You know what? I think they had their talent level under him was the best it's been.
They're top-level talent. I mean, there's no question when you look at Trace McSorley and the job he did, and I think Trace McSorley was way underrated. Yep. But with Godwin and Saquon Barkley, but I think overall the depth of talent should be better now. I just don't think they're pulling out of it what they should be pulling out of it.
You're exactly right. They're not getting the talent out of the players that Joe had in the 2016 team. You know, with the tight ends, the wide receivers. I mean, even our offensive line. I mean,
yeah, I'll be curious where it goes with the two guys that are now. He doesn't seem to want to separate one from the other, which tells me that the next coordinator might not be either of these guys. We'll see. There's some other jobs opening up too. There could be some more staff movement. But James made a big call yesterday where he kicked that 48-yard field goal up 10-6, which I didn't like, and it was 4th and 1. It was another chance for your offensive line. I was kind of curious on the whole dynamic there.
It did lead to an insurmountable 13-6 lead, though. So.
Okay.
Do you think James possibly takes over the reins as the OC?
No.
You don't think he's going to go that route?
No, I don't, because he went out of his way to say the whole head coach of the offense, defense, special teams. He went out of his way to say that, and I think if you look at what he's all about, he's a guy who, again, whether you agree with it or not, he is very good at being the CEO of the entire program.
Absolutely.
The way that he's built the facilities and added to the staff and all those things. And he embraces that, whether it's media, whether it's fundraising, whether it's recruiting, all of those things he's very good at doing. And I don't think you can be as good as you need to be at those things if you're also the play caller.
That's a good point to make. And also, James has done a good job elevating the program. It's looking like they're heading to another New Year's Six Bowl. And I think the Peach Bowl seems to be the one that a lot of analysts are predicting Penn State to be in right now.
Wow, and if it's Alabama that's waiting for you, or the loser of the SEC championship game, I see Penn State as being kind of a decided underdog, but at least they're going to get another marquee opportunity, whether it's the Peach Bowl or possibly Texas or maybe even Washington or Oregon, whoever might lose there.
Yeah, and I think given the dynamic of college football at this point, I think you want the best possible opponent you can get. Number one, you want to make sure as many guys play in that game as possible, and if you're not in an elite game, and if you're not playing an elite opponent, how many guys decide that maybe this isn't the best opportunity? We saw it a few years ago at the Outback Bowl when guys weren't actually enamored of that opportunity, and then they go to the Rose Bowl last year and everybody kind of plays.
Joey Porter didn't play though.
Most of the guys played. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a good point.
I thought last year's team. I work with the players on Monday night. I have a players show that I talk to these guys, and that was like that light at the end of the tunnel was that Rose Bowl, and they were working towards that. So, me personally, I think these guys saying, "Hey, we have a chance to play Alabama." That's where these guys come out of high school. Alabama was the top dog. I know it's Georgia now, but these
that's Goliath
this is the biggest
for these guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that these guys can sit there and say, you know what? My last game at Penn State, we beat Alabama. And I think that would make the bowl game that much more special. And I don't think a lot of guys are going to play, but I think that more will play if they're playing Alabama.
Well, Absolutely. They had great leadership last year with Clifford
yes, they did.
And Mustafa and the guys on. So, I give those guys credit for kind of shepherding to complete it last year.
Right. Obviously, a 10-win season is very much in reach. They could beat Michigan State on Friday, and then they're probably in a New Year's Six Bowl. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to crown our Nitwit of the Week.
Don't miss a minute of Nittany Nation Overtime, now also on Apple and Spotify.
The Nitwits are being brought to you by Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By Fullington Tours, offering round-trip transportation to and from Beaver Stadium from locations in State College and Altoona. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome back into Nittany Nation Overtime. It's time to crown our Nitwit of the Week. And Mark, looks like I won last week. I'm tied with you now.
Well, not you. It takes two people to be tied with me. So.
Hey, I've gotten 3 of the 4 picks between me and Andrew.
Good job.
Neil, you seemed a little bitter about this week.
21
as
points.
you should.
You know, I helped make the rules, but we got to change them next year.
don't have to change anything.
You know, I was 29-6. It was 27. So, but hey, congratulations, Ryan. I'm not mathematically eliminated. You go first.
All righty, I'm going to go Penn State's going to win this one 31-3.
Wow. I will say, I think Penn State, the defense is going to play well. I'm still a little nervous about that offense. I will go 24-10.
I'm going to go lower. I think not much atmosphere up there. Michigan State plays good defense. I'm going to say 22-13 Penn State.
Senior day for Sparty out there in Detroit, so they're going to come out a little hot. I mean, but I think that their team is finished. I think Penn State goes 40-17.
All right, so it seemed to be in unison that this will be a blowout. We're out of time now. Thank you so much for watching this week's edition of Nittany Nation Overtime. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back next Sunday after the Michigan State game.
Thanks for watching WTAJ's Nittany Nation Overtime. Tonight's show is brought to you by DeLeo Games, Cisney & O'Donnell, The Student Bookstore, Joe Comfort Toyota, Legends Power Sports, and Belding & Mall.
The NitWits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By DeLeo Games, serving the community since 1945. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed & Salaney Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By McAlear's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through, one-stop beer store. By Brent Kogan Electrical Services, lighting the way for you. By NovaCare, Altoona and State College, the power of physical therapy. By Fullington Tours, offering round-trip transportation to and from Beaver Stadium from locations in State College and Altoona. By Blair Candy Company, the one-stop shop for all your tailgating needs. Candy, snacks, paper supplies, and more. By Harry's Construction. If you can dream it, we can create it. By Lions 24/7 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.